Hello everyone, I'm Frugal Tesla Guy here, and in this episode of the Back to the Basics series, we take a look at the overall legroom and the overall feel of the car itself when we're talking about size. And speaking of size, this car can be compared to that of the Honda Civic and also the BMW M3 series, not only with cubic feet, but also the overall dimensions of the cars. Now, when you get inside the car, the overall feel is actually quite spacious. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, you've got this beautiful panoramic roof here, right? Not only can you see everything above you, but it gives you a bigger, more open, spacious feel. Now, on top of that, due to the minimalistic design of the Tesla Model 3, you actually have a lower than normal dashboard. Now, that gives you a bigger windshield and a bigger field of view, and on top of that, a bigger feel inside the car. But the car can feel as big as it wants. What about the actual comfort? We're talking leg room, head room, elbow rooms, shoulder room. I mean, this is a smaller car, technically, right? Again, we were comparing it to that of the Honda Civic and even the BMW M3 series. So when we're talking cubic feet, it's a smaller car. So Tesla has done what they can to help make it more comfortable for you. The seat can move up and down. It can move forward, backward. Of course, the seat can recline and move forward. And when you combine that with the steering wheel also being able to move it closer to you or farther away from you or up and down, you can really customize how comfortable you are when you're driving this car. All right, so just to kind of give you a base, I'm 6'1", and I've got a full foot on my wife. She's 5'1". So as I get in this car, you can see this is the personal settings that I've got in this car. The seat where I want it and the steering wheel where I've got it. Now to kind of give you an idea, my wife, let's just take a look at her settings personally here. And you can see, number one, the steering wheel for her hasn't moved a whole lot. But what she's done differently, a couple of things, is she's not only brought the seat a lot closer to the steering wheel because she's a lot shorter than me, but she's also raised the seat higher so she doesn't have to kind of look over the steering wheel. She's got a really good vantage point as she sits up higher and doesn't have to really kind of struggle to look over the steering wheel. So again, there are many different settings that you can put on this car to make it more comfortable for you. So again, I'm going to put it back to my personal settings here, and just to kind of give you an idea of how many different directions and ways that you can move the seat. Number one, let's say I was taller and I wanted to be kind of further away from the accelerator. I can do that. It goes back plenty, and now it's at a point where it is uncomfortable for me. I have to really kind of reach to get to the accelerator. I'm also kind of farther away from the steering wheel. So let's actually see if I can move the steering wheel closer to me. And no, I can't move it any closer to me. But again, if I'm taller, I'm going to have longer arms, so it's most likely to be more comfortable for me. But on top of that, I can also move the seat higher, and it kind of angles back as well here. You can kind of angle it more forward this way. And now it's kind of reaching a level where it's getting a little bit too high. And then of course, on top of that, I can take the steering wheel and I can bring it up, all the way up. I can move it kind of farther away from me if I'm kind of moving in closer. So now I'm sitting higher and I got a better vantage point. I can bring it back down here. And you see how it doesn't just go straight down, it kind of goes down more at an angle. So I am getting a little bit farther away, but it's also kind of what it's doing is angling me more this way to where I'm kind of reclined back a little bit here and making it a little bit more comfortable. But again, we're getting kind of far away out of my comfort zone when I'm driving. So I'm going to take it back to my personal settings and just kind of show you kind of where all my settings are. See how this steering wheel is going back to where it needs to be. We've got the seat going back to where I want it. And again, we are back to my comfortable position. So really to kind of wrap it all up as far as legroom is concerned, you can give yourself as much legroom as you need. Now, I can't personally speak for someone who may be 6 foot 8 inches tall or 9 feet tall, or excuse me, 8 feet tall, probably closer to that. But I can speak from someone who is 6 foot 1 inches tall that I've got plenty of leg room, and there's plenty of wiggle room too. If I wanted to bring it back more, I could certainly do that. And from a standpoint of my wife, who's a lot shorter than me, she can move that seat a lot closer, bring the seat higher, making it much more comfortable for her as well. So for a small size car, Tesla has done a fantastic job in making sure that you can adjust both the seat and the steering wheel to your comfort, so when you're driving this car, it doesn't even become any kind of distraction, and you can just love and enjoy driving this car as the way it should be. So let's go ahead and take a look at the seat and all the different adjustments that you have. You have the three levers here. This one will take you up and down and both forward and backward. This one takes the back of the seat and reclines it or brings it forward. And this one here is for lumbar support. So again, you can see how this kind of goes up here. This one brings it back down. This also brings it back, and pushing it this way brings it forward. And again, you can't really see here, but this is bringing the seat back. Now it's bringing the back seat forward. And this here is the lumbar support. And that's basically the lower back, lower portion of your back. And some people like to kind of have that kind of sticking out, that little hump to kind of give you that added relief. That's all personal preference. But that's just kind of a quick look at the different settings that you have for the seat. Okay, now let's go into the back of the car and see what we've got as far as legroom is concerned. All right, so keep in mind that when I was telling you earlier that I'm 6'1" tall. So the seat that's in front of me is set to my personal settings. So if you have a tall person driving and a tall person in the back, you can see that it's not exactly the most spacious. However, that being said, due to the fact that, you think about the fact that I'm tall, the person in front of me driving is pretty tall, it's actually not that bad. I've got plenty of space between my knees and the back of the seat. I've also got about, as I sit up straight, I've got about 2 fingers width in kind of from my head to the top of the car. So about that much space between my head and the top. I don't feel as though my head is cramped and that I'm really close to the ceiling. And again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've got this panoramic roof and it makes it feel more open inside. But another thing, and something that people tend to talk about, is the fact that the seats tend to sit lower and the floor, that is, tends to be a little bit higher. So what happens is that causes your knees to sit up higher than most cars, and over time people say that that tends to be a little bit more uncomfortable. Now, since I've never gone on a long trip in the back of this car, I personally can't speak from experience, but that's, I guess, something you're going to have to go off of from other people's experiences sitting in the back of this car for an extended period of time. Now again, one of the other unique features of the fact that this is an electric car, you don't have that hump in the middle. So all 3 passengers in the back have the same amount of legroom. In fact, what feels good about this is I can put both my feet a little bit farther forward, and that brings my knees down a little bit more. But on top of that, of course, we don't have that big hump. And once again, I'm looking at about that 2-fingered width between the top of my head and the top of the ceiling. Now, I'd be willing to guess that if you get 3 people in here, you're definitely going to be shoulder to shoulder, and it's not going to be the most comfortable. I think as you start getting 5 people in this car, you're going to feel it. I think most comfortably you're going to have 4 people in this car, because of course then you eventually have where you've got this armrest. You can't obviously have this armrest down when you have somebody sitting in the middle. But again, the overall comfort when you're sitting behind somebody who's tall, you can see that even as a tall person, I've got plenty of leg room. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up here and I'm going to take and put it into my wife's settings, who's a lot shorter and would have her seat up a lot farther. Now take a look at the difference here. Now I can even do this. I can kind of sit back a little bit more. I've got a little bit more space. In fact, now at this point, I've got 2 more fingers of height between my head and the top of the car here, and I can really just kind of sit back and enjoy. I can put down this this armrest. I'm a lot more comfortable. And so again, obviously, if you have somebody who's short who's driving, or even somebody who's short in the passenger side, you're going to have a lot more leg room. And of course, I suppose the same could be said for sitting in the middle. But again, now what's happening is you have kind of your knees, or my knees, are kind of butting up against either side of the seat here. So there's not as much opportunity for me to really sit back and enjoy that. Now on top of that, also something that needs to be said is that the center of seat here, it's not as comfortable. These are a lot softer. These are designed more for people to sit here comfortably. The middle seat, not as comfortable because number one, it doesn't feel like it kind of sits you back as much. And on top of that, where the armrest is, this is actually not really that soft. It's fairly firm. So as I sit back in here, I can feel it. So I would say that over a long period of time on a journey, I wouldn't be as comfortable with my back sitting on this because it's not as soft as the two other seats. This right here, as I mentioned, just a lot softer, a lot more comfortable, more designed to kind of ergonomically fit your body, and it feels more comfortable, whereas the middle seat, not as comfortable. But again, now you're reaching that level of you've got 5 people in the car, and the overall comfort is going to be, it's going to be reduced just because you've got so many people in a car that's really, honestly, quite honestly, not designed to fit that many people. Again, you can fit the 3 people in the back, but you're going to be a lot more comfortable with only 2 people sitting in the back. So my overall take is I kind of take a look at someone who's tall, sitting behind somebody who's tall, I'm still fairly comfortable. But I'm obviously going to be more comfortable with somebody who's short who's driving, or vice versa, if someone who is short in the passenger seat. And I can certainly kind of lounge a little bit more, get a little bit more comfortable, and it would probably make it more comfortable for those long trips. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Back to the Basics series, taking a look at leg room and the overall feel inside the car. Now, as someone who's a little bit taller than average, I will say that in no shape or form do I feel as though I am cramped inside this car. I feel as though I've got plenty of leg room and headroom. And sitting in the back seat, even behind someone who's as tall as me, I feel as though I've got plenty of leg and headroom, and even more comfortable if I was behind my wife, who's about a foot shorter than I am. So I think Tesla has done a phenomenal job in taking a smaller car and making it comfortable for people of all sizes. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and better yet, be sure to subscribe to my channel, as I'll be doing more videos like this to help keep you informed about the Tesla Model 3. And until my next video, stay positively charged.